Okay, so have you ever thought about, like, using a laser to fuse metal together?
It's pretty wild, right?
It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, it's actually a real thing, and it's called laser beam welding. And honestly, it's every bit as cool as it sounds.
So that's what we're diving into today, laser beam welding.
You got it. We're going to break down exactly what this career is all about using some awesome insights from RoleCatcher. They've got career guides, platform data, the works.
Awesome. So no more mystery. Let's shed some light on this laser-focused career, I guess you could say. What exactly does a laser beam welder do?
Well, they're the ones fusing metal with, you guessed it, lasers.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
But it's way more than just pointing and shooting a laser. We're talking high precision here, creating super strong, clean welds. Way less distortion than with traditional welding, too.
Oh, so it's like the difference between using, I don't know, a sledgehammer versus a scalpel?
A perfect analogy, traditional welding uses a broad heat source, which, yeah, can lead to warping and a bigger heat-affected zone. But laser beam welding, that concentrates the heat onto a tiny, precise spot.
So you're saying it's all about accuracy, minimizing any unwanted side effects.
Exactly. And that takes a skilled hand. These welders operate and maintain some seriously complex laser beam welding machines.
Okay, so they're not just pushing a button. They're really in control of the process.
Totally. They're carefully setting parameters, figuring out the best materials, constantly watching the whole process to make sure those welds are absolutely perfect every single time.
That sounds pretty intense. And where does all this precise welding action happen? What's the typical work environment?
Think manufacturing or industrial settings, factories, workshops, places where precision is key.
So probably not your typical quiet cubicle job then.
Not quite. It can be demanding, that's for sure. You've got heat, you've got noise, sometimes hazardous materials. Safety is definitely top priority here.
Makes sense. Attention to detail and safety consciousness must be crucial for any aspiring laser beam welder then.
Absolutely.
So let's say you're ready to ditch the desk job and pick up a welding torch. What does that career path actually look like?
Well, RoleCatcher's guide points to a pretty standard apprenticeship model.
Okay, so you're learning the ropes from the pros.
Exactly. You start as an entry-level welder, working alongside experienced professionals. Think of it like a surgical residency, but for welding.
Intense. So you're not just like fetching coffee and making copies.
Definitely not. You're prepping materials, lending a hand to senior welders, getting comfortable with the machines, all under supervision, of course.
Right, so it's all about gaining experience and confidence.
Exactly. And as you progress, you climb the ladder to a junior welder position.
And what's that like on a day-to-day basis?
More autonomy, for sure. You're setting up machines on your own, fine-tuning those laser settings, really taking ownership over the quality of your welds.
So you're flying solo, but with a safety net nearby.
That's a great way to put it. You're building that foundation, getting those precision skills honed in, proving you can handle the heat, both literally and figuratively.
And from there, it's on to becoming a senior laser beam welder.
Right.
So what does that next level look like? What changes?
That's where things get really interesting, because now, as a senior welder, you're not just a master with the laser itself. You're leading the team. You're a mentor. Maybe even a bit of a visionary.
Okay, so you're not just welding, you're leading the welding team into the future of the craft.
Yeah, exactly. You're overseeing projects, making sure the quality's top-notch, training new welders, bringing them up to speed. You might even find yourself researching new equipment, checking out the latest technologies, really pushing the limits of what's possible with laser beam welding.
So you're shaping the future. That's exciting. But let's back up for a second. We've talked about the career path. But what about the skills you actually need? What are the qualifications to really make it in this field?
Right, so obviously you need to know how to use those laser beam welding machines.
Makes sense.
And you need a deep understanding of the welding techniques themselves. But it's not just about knowing how to use the tools. There's more to it.
Okay, so what are some of those less obvious but just as important skills? What should people be thinking about?
Well, attention to detail is huge. You can't overstate that. Remember, you're working with lasers here, so precision is key. Even a tiny mistake can have a big impact on what you're working on.
No pressure.
Right. And things don't always go as planned, so you need some serious problem-solving skills. Sometimes a machine breaks down or the material isn't behaving how you expect, and you need to get creative to find a solution. And you got to make sure that weld is perfect.
It sounds like it takes a special kind of mind to do that. Like you're an engineer, but also an artist at the same time.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And we can't forget about safety. Working with high-powered lasers is serious business. You need to be aware of your surroundings at all times. Follow all those safety protocols.
Makes sense. You can't mess around with that stuff.
Nope, those safety glasses, they're not just for show.
Now, how about certifications? We've mentioned the Certified Laser Beam Welder, CLBW. Is that something you need to even get started in the field?
It's not always required, but having that CLBW certification can give you a real advantage.
Sure, especially in a competitive job market.
Exactly. It shows employers you've got the skills and you know what you're doing.
It's like a badge of honor, proving you can handle the heat of the laser. No pun intended.
Exactly. It sets you apart. And speaking of standing out, that's where a platform like RoleCatcher can be a game changer when you're on the job hunt.
So it's more than just a job board. What makes it different?
Oh yeah, way more. They've got tons of resources to help you navigate your career, especially in a specialized field like laser beam welding.
Like what? Give me the highlights.
Well, their job searching tools are designed specifically for welders, like laser beam welders. It helps you find positions that actually match what you're looking for and the skills you have.
So no more spending hours on those job sites that are just a jumbled mess.
Exactly. And once you find some jobs you're interested in, their resume builder can help you create an application that stands out.
That's so important because getting your resume noticed can be so tough. It's like those applicant tracking systems are a black hole sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it. But get this, RoleCatcher uses AI to look at your resume and suggest ways to make it better.
Wow, so it's like having your own personal resume expert. That's got to be a huge help.
Totally. It increases your chances of actually getting noticed by a recruiter. But even with all the prep in the world, there's still this big question hanging over everything.
You're talking about automation, right? We've touched on it a little bit, but it's a big one. Robots are everywhere these days, even in welding. So what does that mean for someone thinking about a career in laser beam welding? Is there even going to be a job for them in the future?
I get it. It's a valid concern. Nobody wants to train for a job that's about to be taken over by robots.
Right.
But here's the thing about automation. It's going to change things for sure, but it's not necessarily a bad thing for human welders.
Yeah, so it's not this humans versus robots situation everyone always talks about.
Not quite. It's more like figuring out how humans and robots can work together. Because think about it, robots are great at doing the same thing over and over, those really precise movements. And they never get tired. But what they don't have is the human touch. They can't problem solve on the fly, come up with creative solutions when something unexpected happens. And they're not so great at adapting to new situations either.
So the future of welding isn't about humans or robots. It's about humans and robots working together as a team.
Exactly. Automation is probably going to change the way the job looks, not necessarily eliminate it. Like instead of running the welding machine yourself all day, you might be the one programming a whole team of welding robots.
So instead of worrying about being replaced, aspiring welders should be thinking, how can I develop the skills to work alongside these robots? How can I stay ahead of the curve?
Totally. And that's where those less obvious skills we were talking about come in problem solving, being able to adapt, always being ready to learn new things. Those are going to be super valuable in an automated welding world.
So if you're someone who's excited about new technology, who loves that feeling of getting something exactly right, and who isn't afraid of a challenge, then laser beam welding could be the perfect fit. Even with automation changing the game, those skills are always going to be in demand.
Absolutely. And with resources like RoleCatcher, you can learn everything you need to know and set yourself up for success in this field.
Well said. And that about wraps up our deep dive into laser beam welding. We've covered what the job's really like, the skills you need to make it, and even how to use platforms like RoleCatcher to get your foot in the door.
It's been fun, right? From the precision of those lasers to imagining a future where humans and robots are building amazing things together.
If you want to learn more about laser beam welding or any other career that's got you curious, head over to RoleCatcher's website. They have a ton of information on there. Until next time, keep those lasers sharp and those career goals in sight.